Okay, so House Bill 5259 by Representative Edwards is in front of us now, and this is a act relating to towns and cities creating a voluntary mechanism for municipalities to dedicate a park, conservation, or other land they own as public trust land in perpetuity to protect and preserve it for its future use. You see that the good Representative Edwards is here. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This bill is enabling. Make that very clear. This is enabling legislation. And I believe it came originally from North Kingstown or Lincoln, one of the two, very diverse parts of the state, but it came from one of the two cities. And when they put it through, they realized it was only for that community. So they wanted to allow the rest of the state to use this. Tiverton, my community, has a very long history with land trusts and preserving land. So they asked me to put this legislation through for them. What it does, it gives the cities and towns the authority to dedicate a park or other open space that they own as a public land trust. Okay? Dedicating that property as a public land trust permanently protects the properties as an open space. The legislation is based on the authority in Rhode Island's Constitution. It is entirely voluntarily by the host community. And municipalities right now can already dedicate a conservation property that they own as a public trust to assure residents that the property will always remain conserved in open space use. Again, the town of Tiverton has put away hundreds of acres for open space, especially in the south part, the lower 2/3. But within walking distance of my house, and I live in the upper third of Tiverton, which contains 2/3 of the population, so it's a little much more dense because we're right up on the city of Fall River. There are woods. There's a Revolutionary War redoubt. There is a lot of land that the town, through the Tiverton Land Trust, has preserved. So I thought other cities and towns throughout the state would want to take advantage of this as well. Again, this is enabling legislation. If a city or town wants to do it, they can. If they don't have to. But if they do, 2 nights ago, my dog was out barking and 2 great horned owls were in the tree right outside my house, hopefully looking for the rats. Mm-hmm. So it helps everything. It helps our environment, and it helps preserve a lot of open land for future use. So thank you, Chairman.
Are there any questions for Representative Edwards? I'm hearing none. We do have some verbal phone-in calls, so we will go to Thomas Rogers, and he is pro House Bill 5259. Mr. Rogers? Mr. Rogers, are you there?
Yes, good evening.
Oh, good evening. The floor is yours, Mr. Rogers, on House Bill 5259.
Okay. All right, thank you very much for your time this evening, and thank you, Representative Edwards, for sponsoring this bill. My name is Tom Rogers. I'm the chair of the Narragansett Land Conservancy Trust, which is a municipal land trust. Over the past couple of years, we have been improving stewardship of the properties that the land trust has conserved since it was formed over 30 years ago. We discovered that the town conservation land, which had been acquired using RIDEM open space grants, are protected through conservation easements held by RIDEM. However, when we're looking at this information as well, we also discovered that the town conservation properties donated to the town or acquired with municipal funds had no permanent protection. To say it another way, a conservation property which town residents believe are permanently conserved could be sold or converted to other uses with just 3 town council votes. The Land Trust began working with the Rhode Island Land Trust Council to provide stronger protections for municipal conservation properties. One of these possible protections measures is to hold the properties in the public trust. To demonstrate the need for legislation codifying the town's authority to dedicate conservation properties as held in the public trust, our land trust asked the Narragansett Town Council to adopt a resolution dedicating the unprotected conservation properties as being held in the public trust. The Narragansett Town Council unanimously adopted this resolution last Tuesday, February 15. House Bill 5259 clarifies the town's authority to dedicate conservation properties as held in the public trust by codifying the authority and protecting municipal conservation properties for future generations. We ask the committee to approve the legislation, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Are there any questions for Mr. Rogers? No? No? Hearing none? Thank you. We appreciate your testimony this evening. Next,
Thank
we
you.
have Rupert Friday. Mr. Friday, welcome to the House Municipal Government and Housing Committee. On House Bill 5259, the floor is yours.
Good evening, Chair Hall, Vice Chair Fogarty. I'm Rupert Friday, Executive Director for the Rhode Island Land Trust Council, which is a coalition of over 45 land trusts throughout the state that are working to protect the special places that define the character of our communities. And thank you for this opportunity to testify on House Bill 5259, which is enabling legislation so that municipalities can dedicate properties as public trust land. And thank you to Representative Edwards for sponsoring this legislation. The Land Trust Council supports House 5259. Rhode Island has 19 municipal land trusts, and you just heard from Tom Rogers from Narragansett Land Trust, that are created by town charter or state legislation with the mission of protecting open space properties and the special places in our community for future generations. When land trusts and municipalities conserve a property or create a park with funding from state bonds or federal agencies, conservation is recorded in these properties to ensure they are permanently protected. However, as Mr. Rogers explained, when a property is donated to a land trust or when the town acquires a property without state or federal funding, there's often no conservation easement and no assurance to citizens that these properties will remain protected. As you all know, citizens rely on their parks and other public open space lands for outdoor recreation, relaxation, rejuvenation, and that's been more conspicuous than ever during this COVID pandemic when we've seen soaring use of conservation areas and trails across Rhode Island. And people make decisions about where to live, where to work, where to establish their businesses based on the proximity of these places, and residents assume that these places are permanently protected and will always be there for them and for future generations. As Representative Edwards explained, this is enabling legislation, gives municipalities another tool for assuring citizens that a protected open space property that is owned by the municipality will remain protected. The legislation builds on language in the state's constitution, and it gives municipalities an alternative to recording a conservation easement on property to permanently protect it. And this might be preferred option if the municipality doesn't want to give some authority to a third party who holds a conservation easement. It also might be necessary when there isn't an organization willing to hold a conservation easement on the property. Public trust dedication has been used in Pennsylvania since 1950s. It's also used in Maine and California. And so this legislation will give municipalities another tool for assuring their citizens that conservation properties are permanently protected, will always be there for them. Now, we ask the committee to approve this legislation. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Friday. Vice Chair Speakman has a question for you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Friday. My question is, would this apply to all properties owned by a municipality or just properties that are now designated in the planning documents as conservation or somehow already set aside for conservation open space?
So this is enabling legislation that allows the municipality to specify. So if there's a property that the municipality owns that's held, it's in public open space use. It's owned, everybody assumes it's permanently protected, but it doesn't have a conservation easement on it. The town can decide to then dedicate it as a public trust property. So it would be very selective based on what the town wants to do, and through a town process such as a resolution or a ballot referendum.
Yeah, just so I'm clear, though, if a municipality wanted to build, say, a senior aging-in-place housing development.
Yep.
This, and parcels of land that might be good for that could be taken off the books in perpetuity if the current council decided to do so. Future councils would be constrained.
So the properties already, this is for properties that are already protected for open space use, and it's sort of, you can be very, you can craft your public trust dedication to define specific areas. In Pennsylvania, they actually have models that allow the towns can use to define, craft the way that they want to protect a property or specific property. So there may be a property where you want to protect a piece of it because it's really important forest habitat, but not protect the rest of it with this public trust dedication. And it could be crafted that way, the town resolution or whatever is going to protect it.
So when you say that these properties are already protected.
Yep, they're owned by the town for open space use. That's what this applies to.
But I mean, when you say they're owned for open space use, who says that? Who says what they're used for? The planning documents or?
I think there's properties in towns that the town owns and everybody assumes is being protected for open space purposes. And so that's really what this is aimed for. It's not for example, if there's a municipal land trust, especially, that's what these are used for. We're thinking everybody assumes that the properties that the municipal land trust has protected are permanently protected, and this is for those properties that everybody's assuming.
Okay, and what I'm trying to get at here again is if current town councils could constrain future town councils from using land that might be perfect for a new high school, say. It's hard for me to see from the language how much property the town could actually constrain from further development, even development in public purpose that we all agree on. So thank you for giving me something to think about. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and I'll be happy to talk with you further about this.
Thank you. Thank you, Vice Chair.
No problem. Are there any other questions for Mr. Friday? Nope. Hearing none. Thank you, Mr. Friday, and we know that you also sent in some written testimony too.
Yeah, and I know that the Audubon Society has also submitted written testimony.
Yes, I was just going to mention Meg Kerr from the Audubon Society also sent some written testimony, and she is pro the bill. So thank you very much, Mr. Friday. Again, any other questions? Hearing none, I will close the hearing now on.
Thank you.
No problem. Thank you. House Bill 5259. Up.